Hello again, you sick, twisted weather freaks and snow perverts from across the US of A. It's a time for the Weather Risk winter forecast. This is the short version for 2018 and 19. I'm a meteorologist, DT, from Wxrisk'S.com, the commander of chaos, the colonel of confusion, the captain of catastrophe. Let's talk about this winter. Very anticipated winter coming up here. A lot to talk about, so let's get right to it. Now, this is the short version, so the long version is going to have a lot more technical stuff in it. So look for that one if you want to find out the more detailed meteorological reasoning behind the forecast. But not everybody wants to do that. Some people just say, DT, don't give us the song and dance, just give me the damn forecast. So here we go. All right. Generally, there are three types of winter seasons over the eastern U.S. All right. And by eastern U.S., we generally mean east of the Mississippi River. There's the severe or the prolonged winter, there's the normal winter, and then the mild and wet winter. So let's take a look at the three different types. Now, the normal winter usually begins sometime around mid-December, but sometimes you can hold off till Christmas. And often it has cycles or intervals where the pattern favors cold and mild and snow and rain, then active and quiet. It's usually the winter. We usually have that classic January thaw, somewhere in the middle of January. And often there's a 2 to 4 weeks where it's really cold and really stormy. And that represents like the real heart of the winter. And sometimes there can be an area or a subregion over some portion of the eastern half of the country that get hits bam, 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 or while other areas don't get anything. And some examples of these types of winters was the winter of 2017-18 last year, 2014-15, 2010-11, and 1986-87. With a lot of big middle Atlantic snowstorms there. All right. There's also the severe winter, or the prolonged winter. It starts usually in mid or late May. Now, sometimes you can hold off to middle December, but once it starts, it goes gangbusters all the way through, right through March or early April. And there may only be 1 or 2 mild intervals. Sometimes there'll be none. Now, you can have normal temperatures with some Arctic outbreaks, but with a lot of snow. Or you can feature a winter which is a sustained below normal and much below normal with near normal snowfall, or even a little below. Examples of that was the severe winter of 1976-77, which some of you may remember did not have a lot of snow, but it was severely cold, as the Ohio River froze over, the Mississippi River froze over, what have you. Then you have the winter of 77-78, which was cold and snowy. The 95-96 winter, which is a lot of snowstorms on the East Coast, but it wasn't very cold in terms of temperature anomalies. 2002, 2003, the same sort of thing. And 2009, 2010. And then you had the 13-14 winter, which was really cold with lots of middle-sized snowstorms. So, like I said, different combinations here in the severe or prolonged winter. And then the mild winter, well, that features, it's mild almost the entire winter. It usually starts late. Sometimes there'll be no significant outbreaks of cold air until last week of December or even the first week of January. And usually it's much below normal snowfall for most of the eastern half of the country. Most days we'll see the normal temperatures or above normal temperatures, and the mild winters will even have a week or two where temperatures are way above normal. 60s and 70s, that sort of thing. We've seen that before. And the mild winter will often have no widespread Arctic outbreaks. The cold air masses coming out of Canada are either not very common, or they're very weak, or they're not true Arctic outbreaks. And a classic example of that will be because there's not enough snow in Canada to keep the cold air masses deep. So that's a problem. And the examples of that were winter 72, 73. I know it says 74 there. 2001, 2002. The 15, 16 winter, except for the nor'easter on the East Coast. And the winter of 2011 and 2012. All right. So remember that all seasonal forecasting is about, 1/3 science, 1/3 art or intuition, and 1/3 guess. So what we want to do is we have to get a key set of assumptions about the atmosphere. In other words, we have to figure out or guess what the large scale forces are going to be, what we call the pattern drivers. And will drive this particular winter pattern. Examples of that will be the El Nino or La Nina, the PDO, the weak sun cycle, the autumn buildup of snow cover in Russia and North and Canada, the QBO, quasi-biennial oscillation, the sea surface temperatures, or soil moisture. All those things help set up the pattern. Now, the pattern drivers, in turn, set up the teleconnections, or those atmospheric patterns that you hear meteorologists talk about, like the negative Arctic oscillation or the positive Arctic oscillation, the negative EPO, or the positive phase, the negative NAO, the positive phase, the negative PNA, positive PNA, the negative TNH, or the positive phase of the TNH. All those things are helped set up by these other things like the El Nino, the QBO, the PDO, sea surface temperatures, what have you. And then the teleconnections in turn help set up their daily weather patterns, where the low pressures are going to go, where the storm's going to form, where the cold fronts are going to be, where the high pressure is going to be, that sort of thing. Now, key assumptions can bust. And that's something we have to watch out for. The consensus forecast, for example, in the summer of 2017, we were going to get a moderate El Nino, which is going to bring below normal temperatures and above normal rainfall to the plains and Midwest. And also much below normal hurricane season. Almost every single forecast had that in April and May of 2017. Classic example of groupthink. And what actually happened? Well, there's an example. This was from the Insurance Journal, which was in May. Look at the date on there. It says full-fledged El Nino likely second half of the season. Okay, that didn't happen. And then the hurricane season. Look at the stories here. Limited hurricane development. This was last year. Remember, we had Irma and Marie and all those huge storms. And what happened? We had a record active hurricane season. So, and of course, last year, as you can see, there was no El Nino at all along the equatorial Pacific. So that's something to keep in mind. And as you remember, last autumn, we had an extremely active hurricane season. So there you go. So key assumptions are risky. Now, all forecasters do this, and including mine. I just want to let you know that we are aware of this, and we think it's going to be ABC, but it might be XYZ. So let's go on. All right, slide 12 here. We'll take a look at this. Here's actual snowfall from last year. And what's interesting is, if you look at Washington, D.C., and Northern Virginia, remember how I told you in a typical winter you could have areas where there's no snow at all or much below normal in a certain area? Well, take a look at that right in here. Now, Richmond, for example, we were in this beige stuff, which is 12 to 24 inches, even into portions of interior Southeast Virginia. They had pretty good snow. And of course, they had the blizzard down there in Southeast Virginia as well. So you can see but right area there in Northern Virginia and D.C., they kept getting missed. And they had a lot of people in D.C., Northern Virginia, very frustrated by the lack of snow. But you can see there's a clear hole in there, which is hard to explain. It's just one of those things. So that happened in a normal winter. All right, now this is the official CPC forecast for 2018-19. And, it's essentially worthless crap. I don't know how else to explain it. I know it sounds like a bit harsh, but it is. The basic forecast El Nino template is anything that the El Nino forecast uses. They just bring it out all the time whenever there's an El Nino, and as a result, it doesn't really tell you anything. I mean, this forecast is almost the same as the big El Nino had a couple of years ago. Let me show you what I'm talking about here. This is the big El Nino from 2015-16, which was the second strongest on record. Look at the temperatures on the left-hand side here. Okay, and look at the precip here. Now we clear that out and we go back to the previous. There's the temperature, almost the same, a little different, not much. And then here's the precip again from last year, from the 2015-16 winter, and there's the precip there, almost the same, not much different. So, take it for what it's worth. To me, it doesn't tell me much. One point I did make earlier on my Twitter page. If you think about the 18-19 winter, I think about all the past severe winters. By that, I mean winters where the eastern half of the U.S. was snowy or cold or both. And for that, we can think of 93, 94, 95, 96, winter of 2002, 2003, 2003, 2004, 2009, 2010, 2010, 2011, 2012, 13, and 13, 14. Did the Climate Prediction Center forecast any of those winters to be severe winters? No. In fact, just hell no, they didn't. They completely missed it because everything is always equal chances with the Climate Prediction Center. Equal chances, equal chances. It doesn't tell you anything. Just my opinion. So there you go. All right. Now, the weather risk key assumptions about this winter 2018-19. So we think it's going to be a weak to moderate El Nino, and that certainly is underway. We believe it'll be a Mordecai El Nino. All the model data, as well as the actual TAO data and the data from the Japanese and the Australians show this will be a modica El Nino, which is significantly different from the regular El Nino. There's also a large pool of warm SSTAs, that's sea surface temperature anomalies, in the Northeast Pacific. This is fairly recent, and it shows a massive warm pool of sea surface temperatures developing in the Northeast Pacific and the Gulf of Alaska. And these are very similar to the winter of 2012 and 13 and 13-14, which were severely cold with many snowstorms. Now, again, the significance of that pool is that it helps extend the ridge in Western Canada up to Alaska and the Arctic Circle. That's called the negative EPO and a positive EPA pattern. That's how you get your cross-polar flow from Siberia. And when you have your big Arctic outbreaks, your chances of getting a significant snowstorm are much higher. So that's why that's important. That big pool of warm water in the Northeast Pacific increases the chances of cross-Siberian flow this winter. We have a weak sun. Not only is the current solar cycle weak overall, but we're now entering the solar minimum in the current solar cycle. The last time we had a minimum this week was the winter of 95-96 and 2009-2010. Okay, so here we go. December, January, February, my precipitation in the upper left, anomalies, and the temperatures. There you go. That's what I think the whole winter. Now, again, remember, I am including in here March. I just think for the whole winter season, you have to include that. A lot of forecasters don't, and that's fine, but I'm including March. Yes. Okay? And the reason for that is if you look over the last 10 years, you'll see 7 of the last 10 Marches, especially in the Ohio Valley, New England, Mid-Atlantic states, have had much above normal snowfall. So that's kind of an interesting trend which is going on here as of late. The Marches are definitely getting colder, and they seem to be more snow, and the springs are delayed getting started. That definitely has been a trend. And you can remember what we had last year as you forget that. So it's definitely a trend there. Okay, in terms of our snowfall, this is December, January, February, March snowfall anomalies. So as you can see, the purple area right here is 200% normal in the I-95 corridor. Yeah, I've never done this before, folks. I've never put that much snow anomalies in the Northeast. Haven't done it. Been doing this 20 years. I've never done it. Closest I had was like 150% of the winter of 2009-2010. But there you go. And the blue line here is 125%. So this is all mountains. I'm not forecasting 125% of normal snowfall in Los Angeles. I'm talking about the mountains here in Southern California, okay? So stop giving me a hard time. And then also here in the Wasatch and so on and so forth. And then, and this is the line here. So even good snow in Texas Panhandle, I think, for relatively speaking. And very sharp cutoff. All this is normal in here, more or less. And then this is where it really increases. And then this blue line here is 150% of normal. So it takes you down to Atlanta, Little Rock, Memphis, Oklahoma City, Southern Ohio, portions of Central Kentucky, Western New York State. So again, you know, there you go. That's how I see the snowfall for the whole winter. So if you break it down month by month, here we go with the precipitation and the temperatures. Yes, I have changed and corrected the dates. I know on the original version of this, I did 2017, 18. I have no idea why. Fridays are very long days for me. I do a whole bunch of commodity reports early in the morning for a bunch of firms. And then usually I'm up at 6 a.m. and I'm functioning on 4 hours of sleep with an afternoon nap if I'm lucky. So I guess that's what I made the mistake. Anyway, let's get back to this. I've got these updated maps and temperatures, but again, so let me go over this briefly. For December 2018, the precipitation map here, we have it below normal in the Pacific Northwest and over the Rockies, and that's not really a surprise given the strength of the ridge that's gonna be there. So I'm pretty confident about that. If there is an area in December that I'm uncertain about, it's probably the near normal for precipitation. The data continues to show pretty strong southern jet stream here and a lot of moisture along this area, so I'm going to stick with that. For temperatures, the mean trough is kind of in the Midwest and over the Delta and a little bit into the eastern U.S. So for the time being, I'm going to have this large area below normal temperatures in here, but this could be a little further east, and then near normal on the East Coast and northern Rockies and above normal here. So I'm pretty confident about that for December. And then we'll take a look at January. This here is precipitation or temperatures. Precip in the upper left, temperatures bottom right. Now, if you recall, in January, I think there's going to be some sort of large ridge in western Canada, which will extend into central Canada, and that would produce that would shut off the moisture in the northern and southern Canada area and over the Dakotas and Minnesota, and it would also impact the amount of the temperatures here as well. If you have that, if the ridge is on the west coast, obviously Western Canada, Southwest Canada be above normal probably. But if the ridge is a broad ridge like this and extends into central Canada, what happens is this area stays above normal relative to normal. So there, and that also implies again, in if I think my forecast is right, we'll have a fairly deep trough in the eastern Pacific to California, and then one along the southeastern coast and off the coast there. So this would keep your southern storm track in that direction. That's what I kind of favoring here. You can see that with the above normal precipitation. So that's how I see January. I'll take a look at February. Now, February is where things look awesome. I mean, the models just continue to show February really rocking here. All of the models have turned towards the European solution, which has been pretty bullish here for a while. And again, if you look at the long version here, and you see the climate models, you'll see they all have turned towards the European. So we continue to see a very strong southern jet stream, and that's the thing that's really quite noticeable on all of these climate models, not just the European, the Japanese, the British model, the Canadian, very strong southern jet stream. And that with a weak to moderate El Nino, that's actually a very common high probability event. So the precipitation is near normal in here. There are some of the data shows actually a little drier than normal up in this area, but I'm just going to go for near normal. And then above normal is the deep south again, southeastern coast up the east coast here. And then precipitation with a lot of blocking. The temperatures, I think it's going to be below normal in the northeast, and then much below normal, I should say. And which is pretty bullish for me, because when I do seasonal forecasts, I don't like to go a much above normal or a much below normal. I don't think I'm not confident doing that most of the time. But here for the seasonal forecast, I'm pretty bullish about February. And then you can see the normal and above normal on the west coast there as well. And then finally, we look at March. Here we go for March. Now, the reason why I have a below normal precipitation in the Dakotas, eastern Dakotas, Minnesota, Wisconsin, the Great Lakes here is because I think the trough is so deep that it actually may be too cold to snow, or it's a deep trough here. So you're getting a direct flow out of Canada, which is a dry flow for this area. So that's why I've got them below normal precip. And then the trough is pretty big, and you get a big nice storm track in this direction. You can see the trough here by the below normal temperatures in that area as well. This could be more in the East Coast. It's possible. It may be more out a little to the west, so we have time to adjust on March as we see fit. But I think March is also, I think, going to be a pretty darn active month here. So that's my detailed breakdown of the forecast. Now, if you want to reach me for whatever reason, again, you can reach me through my Gmail account. That's probably the best way. I also have a Verizon one, and a Yahoo one, but that's the Gmail. It's the best one. Now, this is my commodity account here on the Twitter, so you're following that. Mostly there I post, U.S. grain weather, Russia, Australia, China, India, what have you, South America. But so if you're following me operationally for snowstorms and for what patterns in the U.S., this is the account you want to follow here, the DTVA Weatherman. And there's a picture of my smiling face from Richmond, from Chesterfield. And that, of course, obviously the Facebook page. Most of you probably already know that. But if you don't, you can always contact me that way as well. And also wanted to point out here that for the winter season, I do offer a couple services if you're in snow removal or landscaping, construction, if you have farms which have conditions, ski resorts. It's amazing how important, impactful the weather is on so many different operational forms of business. I first started this by just doing commodity forecasting, and now it's spread into the operational area. So one of the things that I offer is a daily operational forecast. It's $35 a month. I will tell you that because it's on the website. And it comes out several times a week, at least 3 times a week, sometimes 5 or 6 times, depending on the weather. And you get the Mid-Atlantic region in breakdown of the 13 different zones, and you get a week 2 forecast, and you get sky conditions and temperatures, humidity, winds, precipitation, the whole thing. So it's like a really good bargain, only $35 a month. And you can get that to the website. So just go there if you want to sign up for it. Another one is a snow removal forecast. And here, the price, you don't have to call me because, well, if you're one person or two people and you're operating a truck, that's one thing. If you're operating clearing 500 different shopping centers, that's a totally, and you have 50 trucks, that's a totally different setup. So, but the snow removal forecast is really good. It has a lot of information in it, and I get a lot of compliments on it. They think a lot of the snow removal folks in the Mid Atlantic think it's a unique product, so you might want to take a look at that. This is the weather notification service, which goes out 365 days a year. 7-day notice of any sort of significant weather that might impact you, whether it's whether it's high heat or extreme cold, snow or ice, major rain, flooding, drought, severe weather, hurricanes, whatever it is. If the weather's fine and sunny like it is today, you don't hear from me. If there's stuff coming down the pike and you need advance notice, starting 7 days out, you start getting emails and notifications from me with a weather notification service. And also, finally, we have a texting service goes right to your smartphone. We use WhatsApp for that, and also the SMS texting service on the smartphones. And then also the 30-day forecast for the eastern half of the country has above normal, below normal temperatures, above, same with the precip. Shows you the general pattern. There's some meteorology in it. It goes out to 5 weeks really, and it comes out every Tuesday. Sometimes it's an update on Friday, depending on conditions. And this is a very popular product as well. It gives you a really good notification and change when the pattern's coming up, when the winter, and that way you can have an idea, when is the rainy pattern going to end, when is the cold going to show up, that sort of stuff. Anyway, so that's the adjustment I've made to the video, and hopefully the new maps there clear up any confusion. Sorry for putting the wrong dates on it. Just one of those things mistakes that you're going to make with a lack of sleep. This is meteorologist DT from Wxrisk. I'll see you on the Facebook page and on the Twitter page.